All right, today we're going to talk about First Corinthians and First Timothy plus a few other verses. So First Corinthians 6, 9 through 10 says, "Do you not know that the unrighteous will not inherit the kingdom of God? Do not be deceived. Neither fornicators, nor idolaters, nor homosexuals, nor sodomites, nor thieves, nor covetous, nor drunkards, nor revilers, nor extortioners will inherit the kingdom of God." Sounds pretty harsh. Then First Timothy 1, 9 through 10 says, "Knowing this, that the law is not made for a righteous person, but for the lawless and insubordinate, for the ungodly and for sinners, for the unholy and profane, for murderers and for murderers of fathers and murderers of mothers, for manslayers, for fornicators, for sodomites, for kidnappers, for liars, for perjurers, if there is anything other, and if there is any other thing that is contrary to sound doctrine." So I'd like to first point out that these terms, these words, are all listed in reference in terms of a list. So it's difficult for us to obtain a good context of what these words mean because they're listed in a list. The Greek word malakos, which is used in First Corinthians, and the use of the word arsenokoides, which is used in First Corinthians and First Timothy, have been used to mean many things. Arsenokoides has been used to mean homosexuals, sodomites, child molesters, perverts, homosexual perverts, sexual perverts, or people of infamous habits. The word malakos has been used to mean catamites, the effeminate, boy prostitutes, and sissies. Malakos has also meant to mean self-indulgent in one translation in the 1980s, and masturbators from the 16th to the 20th century in the Roman Catholic Bible. Dr. Helminiak stated in his book, "Nobody knows for certain what these words mean, so to use them to condemn homosexuals is really dishonest and unfair." Malakos literally means soft. It is used of clothing, butter, and women-like men, but it can also mean loose, undisciplined, and unrestrained. If malakos did mean effeminate, it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to have a connotation for gay men. It could describe men who perfume their hair, remove body hair from their body, or men who primp themselves to attract women. It could also be used to describe an effeminate callboy. The point is that the word is not clearly defined at all. Arsenokoides is first used ever in First Corinthians, and it only appears in 2 scriptures. It was a made-up word. Arseno means human male, and koides means bedroom or bed, and is used in reference to sex. So arsenokoides could mean male bedder, in the sense of men who bed other men, men who get bedded by men, men who bed women, or a male prostitute. Scroggs points out in his book that koides is used most often to describe the penetrating male partner, because malakos and arsenokoides are both used alongside one another. He believes that they are intentionally used as a pair to both mean soft, effeminate callboy and an older male exhibiting child abuse in the form of pederasty. This pairing may not be the case because malakos literally means soft and inherently has no sexual connotation. Arsenokoides, however, likely does include in its definition male-on-male sexual behavior, because it's likely a direct translation from the Hebrew words mishkav zakur. These Hebrew word pairings were used as shorthand by the rabbis in the original Hebrew language because they had no single word for male-on-male sexual behavior. So it's a likely direct translation from those words, and arsenokoides likely means man liars. Del Martin states that it's important to consider the fact that the pairing of these words may mean something entirely different, and the way that understood does not deal with standing or being under something. We must examine the words in the context of their uses. Martin concludes that pairing the words most likely has some kind of exploitation, probably by sexual means, rape or sex by economic coercion, prostitution, pimping, or something of the sort. Jack Rogers describes statements made by Victor Furnish when he writes, "The word sodomite is not used in the Hebrew text of the Old Testament, not even to mean a resident of Sodom. It was introduced in English in a half dozen Old Testament passages in the King James Version of the Bible in 1611. Nor does the word appear in the Greek text of the New Testament. The fact that arsenokoite, which is the plural of arsenokoides, um, is followed by slave traders, a group of people who exploited others, adds weight to Martin's evidence for arsenokoides as as sexual exploiters of some sort, since the vices in a list are often grouped according to their similarity to other vices in a list. In that time, the social cultural context, social critics are aware that at that time there was an overabundance of female prostitution and pederastic relationships as well. In fact, men were kept as slaves and abused sexually, and attractive boys and girls were kidnapped and sold into sexual slavery. I mean, it's even going on today still. One must consider the fact that these words also don't denounce lesbian relationships, because arseno means male. So it doesn't make sense that they would be unapproving of gay relationships but not lesbian relationships. In the first century, homosexuality was approved culturally between an older male and a younger male, and a man and a prostitute, and a man and a slave, and a Roman officer and a captive. Most of those scenarios were based on individuals harming one another or having power over another. They weren't consenting, loving relationships. Paul at that time couldn't imagine a monogamous, life-committed gay relationship based on love between two consenting adults. It just didn't exist at that time. Enough about 1 Corinthians and 1 Timothy. I'd like to make some quick references to some other scriptures that are much shorter and aren't worth a full video. Jude 7 talks about, even as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities about them in like manner, giving themselves over to fornication and going after strange flesh, are set forth as an example, suffering the vengeance of eternal fire. Some people state, Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed because of homosexuality, and that this strange flesh is talking about people being attracted to the same gender. I've already talked about Sodom and Gomorrah in a previous video, but in this particular case, I believe strange flesh is in reference to angelic flesh, and the ideas of angels having sex with humans can be seen in other scriptures as well, Genesis 6, 1 through 4 specifically. And then there's other mentions of sodomites throughout the Bible as well. Deuteronomy 23:17, 1 Kings 14:24, 15:12, and 22:47, and then 2 Kings 23:7. They all reference sodomites, but that's in the King James Version. The New King James Version recognized that these scriptures should not be translated as sodomites at all. The Hebrew word is kadeshim, which means holy, sacred ones, devoted, or dedicated ones. I don't see how that has a sexual connotation at all, because these were talking about people that were devoted in dedication to these Gentile gods and not the true God. Yes, they often worshipped and showed devotion as temple prostitutes or cult prostitutes, But the word in of itself does not necessarily have a sexual connotation at all. It refers to these people who were holy or sacred ones or devoted ones. So, once again, thank you for listening, and I look forward to you visiting in the future.